Hey everybody, it's Patrick Escolas with another episode of Banyan's podcast, Tire Tracks. I am blessed to be joined here by Chris Burroughs, the VP of Government Affairs at TIA. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Patrick. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, thank you very much. Glad to have you here. You're the second person we've talked to from TIA before, but you're the first person that has government in their title. So you're real official. No,
don't hold that against me.
I won't. We need government. Where and how, a lot of people debate.
Right.
But well, yeah, no. So this is a logistics industry. You're at TIA. First question I always like to ask is, and because, I found myself here from a myriad of different paths. How did you end up in the logistics space?
Yeah. So after graduating from college, I always was kind of intrigued by politics, always enjoyed politics, kind of grew up in a political family in terms of, always talking about the kitchen table. So I was super interested in it, majored in political science and history. So
hold on for a second. You majored in political science. I majored in political science. Is it because you had an idea of what you were doing or because you're just really good at arguing?
I had an idea what I wanted to do.
All right. There you go.
So after that, obviously went to growing up and living in Northern Virginia, went to the most logical place to practice my love for politics. My first job was with the U.S. House of Representatives right out of college for the Transportation Committee. Go figure.
There you go.
So that was kind of how I stumbled into the world of transportation. Spent a little bit of time there. Went on the outside to a small boutique lobbying firm for a few years. TIA was actually one of our clients. So I got to know the folks, got to know the leadership team there and some of the members within the association. And then 12 years ago, they brought me in-house to handle some of the government affairs stuff and kind of grew through the ranks and been vice president of government affairs for a few years here now. So
that's awesome. So right off the rip, you got into it. Is that just from circumstance that you stuck with it? You were, it was everything you knew, or what about it made you kind of keep continuing down the path? Obviously, government being a part of it, but I guess you could have branched off or jumped into a different area of expertise. What made you stick with logistics and the industry in general?
Yeah, I mean, transportation in general was just always something that was always intriguing to me. Obviously, like I mentioned, being from the Northern Virginia area, traffic pretty much sucks around here. Yeah. So maybe it was just sitting in traffic on 66 nonstop, trying to get anywhere. Something soaked in with me transportation. But all kidding aside, obviously with the committee, and I really enjoyed that work. And at the lobbying firm we worked at, obviously we had a plethora of clients, from telecom to tax to healthcare. And the thing that kind of drew me into the transportation side of things, especially, obviously, was having that background working on the committee. But also there was, for the most part, transportation is bipartisan. We all want strong infrastructure, reliable infrastructure, less traffic mitigation. So it cuts through a lot of the political noise that exists out there. Certainly that you'd run into with tax issues and healthcare and some of the more contentious issues. When I worked on the Transportation Committee back in 2006 when I started, it was one of the very few committees, which there's not many at all anymore, but one of the few committees then that actually worked across the aisle, both sides, got long-term transportation bills done that helped everybody across the country, and again, just put those partisan politics aside and let's get it done for the nation.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's always interesting to hear. And I think one thing is in common throughout everyone that I talk to is it doesn't matter where or what you do, your logistics and transportation is touching you or you're touching it, and it's like death and taxes. It's not going anywhere. I mean, it can shape and change, but yeah, it's something we're all a part of, and yeah, it's here to stay. It's been here for a while now. Within TIA and your role within government affairs, how is TIA involved in the legislation process from a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, my main job is the VP of Government Affairs, and our manager that works alongside me, and obviously our president and CEO, Ann Rinke, as well. Is we're the voice of the logistics industry on Capitol Hill. The joke within DC is there's literally an association for everything. There's actually an association for associations too, which is But everyone's up there, having their voice heard, having their issues, brought forward to members of Congress and their staff. And as us, as the voice of the logistics industry, that's our job to get up and educate members of Congress on the important role that our members are playing, talking about the key issues that are impacting our folks, and just making sure that we're at the table during discussions and providing feedback, and providing expertise where we can, and just in a lot of ways being a resource for them on the education side of things, on the data side of things, the market side of things, so that they've got a better understanding what's going on, so that then when they go to make that informed decision, they think about the logistics industry before thinking about other stakeholders that are out there. Well, in addition to the other stakeholders.
Yeah, and as you say, you're the voice of transportation and logistics. What is that voice calling out for or calling against right now? What are some of the big things that you're shouting on behalf of your members and industry?
Yeah, I think the number one thing right now, and certainly anyone that's in this space, trucking and logistics, would certainly understand this, is the rampant fraud that's going on in the marketplace. We hear about it nonstop from our members. We do a lot of coalition work with groups like OIDA and NASDAQ and ATA, and everyone's feeling the pain of the rampant increased fraud that's going on, with taking many forms from cargo theft to identity theft, double brokering, triple brokering, all the way down the line. It's become crazy. The Wall Street Journal did an article a few months ago. I think they estimated it's about $800 million annually that it's costing the supply chain. And that's cost to our members, that's cost to carriers, that's cost to shippers, and obviously in the end it's cost to consumers. Because somebody's got to front the bill for what's going on.
Yep.
But it's crazy right now. We're doing some things internally that we're trying to help out. I mentioned the outside work with the other groups and trying to get the FMCSA to act on it a little bit more aggressively as well. So I would say that's the biggest education piece right now on the Hill that we're really working on. So,
and why is the fraud, the acts of fraud, so rampant right now? Is this something that's been growing? Is this because of COVID happening and there being such a market demand? Is it because technology is a bigger player than it's ever been? Is there one thing you can point to, or is it a whole bunch and it's organically come to a head?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything you mentioned. To be honest, we've been concerned about fraud for over 10 years. We included some language back in 2012 in the MAP 21 piece of legislation, which was the long-term highway reauthorization back at the time of President Obama, to kind of address this in terms of hey, if you're going to broker freight, you have to have a license to do so.
Yeah, makes sense.
What we were seeing at that time, what we were seeing at that time was a lot of carriers who, for convenience reasons, we're brokering freight out. The kind of the general definition of double brokering, if you will.
Right.
That kind of I think MAP 21 helped with that. There's been limited enforcement on that, which is a problem. But I think because of COVID, really was the ultimate catalyst, and really to your point about the increased volume in the space, for sure. That's really where it ramped up in the last few years. And I think, again, not knocking the agency, they've got limited resources, but if these folks know that they can continue to do this and there's no legal action that's going to be taken, and they've dug into the issue, a lot of these companies aren't even based in the U.S. So that obviously creates another layer of jurisdictional issues as well. And with technology, it just makes it easier for them, and they're constantly evolving. And, we tell our guys, you got to be right every single time on your carrier selection process and who you're going to use. Yeah. They only be right one time, and they've got you for, a load of, Peloton bikes or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And you're out a couple $100,000.
And depending on the situation you're in, that could be make or break for your,
Sure.
for everything you're doing, let alone the relationship. Yep. Yeah. And within that, as you guys are talking about this, all of these bad players, who are you looking to regulate or have jurisdiction on this? And like you said, there's, out of nation players here. Is this from a money and financial, someone finds you and go through the taxes, or we talking about guys on the highway checking every truck? What does that look like in order for prevention? Just because it seems like such a big picture. I mean, obviously there is a department for it, but would you need to almost create a whole new one? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean that's one suggestion for sure. That we've been working with a senator and a member of the House who has proposed to the FMCSA to create a task force out of the Inspector General's office dedicated just to this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean it's a huge issue. There's not going to be one silver bullet that's going to fix everything by any means. But I think a lot of it stems from the registration side of things that are going on.
Okay.
It's apparently, for instance, let me give you an example. So this is one thing we flagged at FMCSA a while back, and to their credit, they did some due diligence to it, took some action. But one of our members flagged on social media that they had found an address in Wyoming that had 272 trucking companies using that address. One house. We did little Google Maps. We saw it was a house. We're like, that seems strange. So
it's a big it's a really big backyard, though.
Really big backyard. Yeah. Yep. Great parking for the truck.
Yeah.
And we sent it to the agency, and they came back and said we can confirm that there is 272 companies that are operating out of this. They have different suites, but we'll send an investigator to investigate. They went out and said there's no one operating out of this building. It's a total hoax. Mm-hmm. We'll see what we can do. Stuff like that. I mean, like going in and changing phone numbers and not having dual factor authentication, changing your PIN online. There's some registration things that could help. Obviously on the front end. And then there's several, red flags or not necessarily best practices that, our members have put together for our folks, the things to look at.
Yeah.
Is these people have gone through this. Unfortunately, there's a lot of commonality that comes up in terms of indicators of, hey, this carrier may not necessarily be who they say they are.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is some of these cases are kind of like the fraud that's across industry, not necessarily just logistics. It could be, somebody's Facebook and phone account getting hacked. It just happens to be someone doing this at the brokerage or the carrier side of things, and then being able to get away with somebody's ship. Okay. No, I hadn't thought, we hear about double brokering so much that I kind of didn't even think about the actual, the true fraud, as if double brokering isn't, but where you're really, out there pretending to be somebody you're not, or to be more of a player than you are, just in order to get somebody's goods or money. No, that's very interesting to me. And you said, so you guys have been working on this for 10 years and it's really something you guys are working on now. What are some other things other than the fraudulent act? I know that carbon impact is a big one. Is that something that's come across the table or being talked about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. The brokerage industry in general is by nature is a very green industry. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we started as kind of the backhaul of things. The trucker was heading back home, didn't want to take an empty load, empty miles, wasted emissions. So that's kind of where the broker kind of filled that void. Okay. But we are an affiliate partner with the EPA SmartWay program. With our members not owning assets, not owning trucks. So there's not so much we can do on the truck side of things, but obviously as a affiliate partner of SmartWay, and we have a lot of members that submit their data and are SmartWay partners with them as well, is that, they obviously give preference to those trucks that are, may have taken some extra steps in order to become a little bit more greener out there in the industry. And, to be candid, it's something that our members do track, but some of the stuff that's coming out of California may be a little bit too extreme. And
what kind of things are coming out of California that are extreme?
I mean, we've been there's 3 regulations that have broker components out of the state of California that we've been tracking for a number of years. And it really just boils down to it really hurts business at the end of the day. Again, we're an industry that cares about green initiatives, reducing. But if we're putting these carriers in situations where they're leaving the state in droves, it kills capacity.
Maybe it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense from a business perspective. And, I understand that, like I said, I understand what they're doing. We get it. But for the sake of, making sure that our carrier partners are still operating in those states, sort of like the IC model. I mean, obviously what we've seen in AB5 is, a lot of carriers are leaving the state of California, unfortunately. The same thing with these CARB and environmental regulations. So there's a line between, where we're comfortable and then where it hurts business and it hurts our carriers. So
now, is it within the carbon footprint and offset? Is it more on kind of a carrot and a stick that's coming out, or right now is it just kind of on a reporting and getting the information? What is California doing that's driving people out? Is it making it so you have to have that information, or that you'd have to pay if you're not offsetting?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of both. I mean, there are different regulations. There's some newer ones that are kind of in the reporting stages. But then, from the broker side of things, there's some other ones like the truck and bus rule, where a couple of our members who have assets a number of years ago got hit for, it was a couple $100,000 fines for not utilizing a truck that didn't have a certain particulate matter exhaust filter on the back.
Gotcha.
So, I can't remember the exact year. I think it was what 2035. I think California wants to be an entirely electric state in terms of the fleet.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So, are we there yet? I don't think so. It wasn't 20 months ago that the governor was telling people not to use their oven during, between 5 and 8 because of the grid. Yeah. There's a lot of infrastructure needs to go into that. But it's becoming unfortunately becoming kind of an anti-business state. And we have a ton of members out there. I know there's a ton of trucks out there that operate in the state. So we want to keep business moving in the great state of California. So
no, and do you have now that's California and a state level, and within government affairs, I would assume you're working at the state and the federal. Would something like that California is doing move federal, or would it have to kind of gain traction in different states, or where's that kind of battleground lie at? What does that look like for you and your involvement? Are you going to Nevada right next door and being like, hey, don't do what California is doing? Or are you going to the senators and say, hey, look at what California is doing? I know we might need to do something across the board nationally, but maybe not this model.
Yeah. A little bit of both, honestly. California is obviously the leader in a lot of these environmental issues. Mm-hmm. And that does, trickle over to local states. It trickles over to other states as well. But also there's discussions and we continue to have meetings at the federal level as well to make sure that these issues are addressed. California can do some of the broker and carrier regulations because at an interstate commerce level, because the federal EPA has given them a waiver to do so, to kind of enforce these greenhouse gas initiatives. Otherwise, when you're talking about cross-border movements where you have a company that's not even domiciled in the state of California, but they're arranging transportation through the state, for instance, that gets brought under the umbrella because of this waiver that the EPA granted them. So there obviously is the federal component to it. And obviously, like I mentioned, they certainly lead, and a lot of states do follow.
And so within that, we've talked about kind of this fraud and the carbon or the green side of things. And that's just two, some of the bigger ones out there. How many different regulations are you guys tracking in a month or a year? Is it like, you pick 5 good ones to fight, or are you just in and out of ledgers, or what does that look like for you? One of your members tells you about it, or you got a AI going through, or you just got a lowly intern trying to highlight every time somebody comes through something on a new government page? There's got to be so much information you guys have to dig through to know where you should be involved or getting ahead of an issue.
Yeah, pretty much. It's quite a bit. Pretty much any issue that falls, but that comes out of the Department of Transportation, and obviously anything that's on the Capitol Hill as well in terms of the Congress. But we track everything. We don't necessarily always take a position on every issue.
Okay.
Speed limiters, for instance, is something that we have not taken a position on. Will likely remain neutral on that issue. That's a very contentious issue between the two trucking associations. I
like to go fast, so I'm
and an issue that we're like I said, we're probably not gonna play in. But yeah, it's quite a bit, and obviously because with any sort of association, we have committees internally and a board of directors that run our policy side of things. We have a policy committee that develops kind of our policy goals for the year. I think in terms of initiatives for this Congress alone, I think we had like 20 or 30 that we've got on our list of things that we're tracking and being cognizant of and advocating on behalf of or against. So we stay pretty busy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine you do. And as far as that staying busy, and always kind of look into the future, where do you, I know you might get bogged down in the day in and day out, but I would assume that you probably have to have a finger on a pulse and an eye forward, especially as these things go. What do you see the next, I guess, topic or battle to be, or what's something that's a big deal but isn't, talked about maybe as upfront and in the media as, climate and carbon, or the fraudulent and the double brokering?
Yeah, I would say, and there's actually the agency, the FMCSA, just released an advance notice of a rulemaking that they're coming out with. We just got it this morning, and it's something we've been talking about for quite a long time that I don't think nearly gets enough press. Is the confusion in the carrier selection process.
Okay.
Obviously, the FMCSA gives trucking companies a safety rating. It's still done by a physical system where they don't have the resources to physically go out and audit 500,000 roughly for hire trucking companies.
One poor guy, he'll get to exactly. It. Yeah.
the limited investigators they have throughout the country doing these nonstops. I think before COVID, they told us they probably did about 5,000 to 7,000 audits a year. Obviously through the COVID period, I would say that was probably cut in half or maybe even a quarter. So it's created a situation where right now 92% of trucking companies are unrated.
Really?
Yep. And what does that mean as for our members and shippers that are going out and selecting these carriers? Is we don't have that assurance from the federal government on are these carriers safe to utilize or not.
Right.
They would like to deputize us to be kind of the police of that and take all the data that they put out there and pick through it and build an algorithm and find something that correlates to safety, because we're all in the same situation. We all have the same shared goal of eliminating crashes out there. But with 92% of trucks being unrated, it's a complete failure of a system. So the agency put out a proposed advance notice proposed rule today that they're looking to change that methodology. Something again that we've been asking for a number of years.
I would just say that sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
And really get away from the physical system because it doesn't work.
No.
And shift to something of data, something of potentially a virtual platform, and let's rate carriers based on for the data instance. Let's rate carriers on all the data that's being fed in. Every time a truck is touched in a particular state, it's fed up. DOT has that data.
Okay.
Every time they get cited, every time they go through a weigh inspection, every time they get a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 inspection, all that stuff, they have all that.
So the data's out there. We're just not using it to this end yet.
Okay. Yeah. And President Obama, to his credit, put a rulemaking out at the end of his second term to do this, and to eliminate the physical system, shift to one of data. And it also eliminated the confusing 4-tiered safety rating structure we currently have: conditional, satisfactory, unsat, and unrated, and said, let's just go red light, green light. You're either you're safe or you're not safe. So conditional, you're not safe, but you're still you're still good to operate.
I'm imagining the old national alerts where it was orange, we're in a yellow, we're in a red. Right. I'm like, I don't know what color we're on, man. It's a purple day. What's going on? Should we use you or should we not? Yay or nay? Yeah, exactly.
Up or down, safe or not. So he tried to put that forward, and obviously, or unfortunately, it got rolled back and kind of put on hold. So we were excited to see this morning that was getting resurrected. Because, like I said, for our guys that are selecting carriers, I mean, this is we need this information because for a variety of reasons, obviously safety being first and foremost, that we're utilizing the safest carriers that are out there to minimize potential crashes and fatalities and injuries and everything else that goes along with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that seems like paramount to what you guys are doing. I mean, business first, but then I guess, overall safety of it. And at a certain point, that overall safety is going to come back and affect business. So it's kind of hand in hand. And it's mind blowing to me, like you said, that 92% is not hitting that, and that, how few are getting manually audited. Nope. No, that sounds like a great thing that they're looking to change that. So good on you for being a loud voice on that. Hopefully, that gets something that moves How fast does something like that move? It's a next question.
No.
Yeah, I know it's government, right?
Yeah, back to the government, glacier speed for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So typically they'll put it out. They haven't officially announced it yet, but they'll put it on the next day or two. Probably be open for 60, 90 days for the public to comment. We'll obviously do comments as well. They have several questions they want people's feedback on, et cetera. They'll take all those comments, and then there's no set timetable, but roughly probably 6 months to a year.
Okay.
They'll come back and say, hey, there's our notice of proposed rulemaking. This is where we're going. This is what we're suggesting we do. Gotcha. Then it goes to another comment period and then you see this pattern here. And then six months later, they come out with a final rule, which is what they're actually implementing. And then after that, they still give typically 3-6 months for kind of implementation period to everybody kind of get their ducks in a row. So it's a long process. Obviously, politics plays into this. Yeah. Like I mentioned, President Obama tried it. President Trump came in, and as part of his rollback, that was one of the things that got cut. So, then it was 4 years of nothing happening. So everything with the government's very, very slow. No matter who's in the White House, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
No, and it's funny to hear it that way, but it's not surprising. But at the same time, at least there's a process, I guess, within that, so you know where you are in the steps of it. So, and within that, like, where do you call that a success for your people? Is it just that it gets passed? Is it are you looking at it and then polling your people? How do you get the real consensus of TIA or of the industry to really making sure you're not going for what you think is best for them, but what they actually want to see out of that?
Yeah, it's heavily leaning on our volunteer leadership of our association.
Okay.
So an issue like that will go before our highway committee. The highway committee will develop the policy position that we will take, and the necessary steps, and feedback and comments to those particular questions that they're going to be posing. And that's it. Our association is run by our members. They're our bosses. So we work for them. No different than the Hill. Obviously, when I worked on Capitol Hill for the House, it wasn't my name on the door. It was the member of Congress's name on the door. If you don't, personally agree with it, he's the elected official. You're not. Or she. But
no, and that's fair.
Yeah, but it's fair, and that's the way it should be, quite honestly. So.
Now, within that, in just recent, we've seen a few things play out in the industry as a whole, like with UPS almost going on strike and then them finding an agreement, and then Yellow just imploding. Sure. Does TIA get involved with that, or is that something you're just keeping an eye on? How does that all affect what you're doing within the government affairs and kind of TIA as a whole?
Yeah, we certainly keep track of that from a market perspective.
Okay.
And what's the impact? Obviously, a company like Yellow obviously had quite a bit of capacity. What's the impact to our members if things like that were to happen? Tracking some of the other logistics companies that may be struggling during this downturn, in the freight recession, as some people are calling it. So from a market perspective, certainly, and obviously, as we build those relationships and educate members of Congress and particularly staff, they'll reach out to us and say like, hey, what's the impact of, what's the potential impact of this Yellow thing that's going on? Like, what happens if, this particular port doesn't, actually strikes, and what's the impact of all that? And, if there was anything positive about COVID, which there probably wasn't, but there was a huge spotlight shined on the logistics industry.
Right.
And what members are doing. And it certainly, created lots of interest, especially from my perspective in the government affairs seat, but a lot of interest on the Hill being like, hey, can you come and explain, really what's going on? And our president and CEO has testified a few times now before Congress on that, is like, hey, we're still coming out of this pandemic era. She did it once during the pandemic, what can government do to help address this?
Funny how that works when all of a sudden things aren't getting to where they need to go, and you go, hold on a second, we forgot about the trucking industry. Yeah. We should look into that a little more.
And most staffers are like, well, the truck just picks it up and brings it. What do you mean? Or it just magically appears on the shelf. It's like, well, there's this whole industry you know nothing about. Let me explain it to you.
I was just saying, in their defense, when a lifetime ago, before I came into this same kind of thing, I'm like, yeah, I see them when I'm driving, and generally, they are trucks. Congratulations, and then you get into it and you're like, oh God, there's so much that I don't understand, or, that's connected and plays a part in everything there. No, it's been really helpful. And it sounds like you guys are doing a lot just for the industry as a whole, obviously for your members, first and foremost, because they're who you're committed to. But overall, it sounds like within the landscape, within government, and with everything that's happening, you have, you're having that conversation. So we all don't have to get tied up in fun governmental processes that happen at the speed of glaciers. And I've taken a lot of your time here, Chris, but I always like to, and I've learned a lot, which is why selfishly I love doing these, because I get a lot of industry knowledge. I like educating myself, but I wanted to offer you a chance to anyone listening here, whether it's TIA members or just the 4 people that listen to my podcast. This is kind of your soapbox. What's your message to anyone listening, whether that's from you as the VP of Government Affairs or just Chris Burroughs as, works just man that has an opportunity to talk to people? What is the message you have with this opportunity?
Yeah, I would say my message would be is get involved with the process. And obviously, if you're a TIA member, get involved with us. If you're a member of another association, get involved with them, or just, individually get involved. And that could be with the political process. These are members of Congress are elected officials. They're elected by you. You guys are the job builders. You're the constituents. You're the voters. They need to hear from you. So I would say if you've got an issue that you guys are passionate about, reach out to those folks. Kind of put their feet to the fire a little bit and let them know that you're there. This is the important role that you're playing in the industry, and as more as just a transportation segment and industry as a whole, not just the broker community, but the broker carrier shipper community, all the way down the line. We need to be more united on kind of the front of let's make sure transportation has a voice and is heard loud on Capitol Hill.
There you go. Chris saying, say it loud, say it proud. And if you've got 270 trucks and brokerages, try not to do it out of one house with no docks. Right. I still like the idea of just someone being like looking at Google Maps and being like, this is strange, and be like, someone else looking at a list of it and like, no, it checks out. There's an address for these. Like,
right.
Yeah. Something's missing there. No, Chris, I really appreciate your time today. Appreciative of everything TIA is doing, what you are doing within the government, and to help the government do the right thing for the industry as a whole. Thank you very much for the time. I really appreciated learning a lot about it. And for all the listeners out there, thanks for listening or watching another episode of Banyan's Tire Tracks podcast. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.